Order. 10-minute rule motion. Hugh Merriman.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given for me to bring in a bill to provide automatic travel compensation. In short, Mr. Speaker, my bill would ensure that passengers on trains, flights and other domestic transport systems automatically receive in their bank account the delay and repay compensation due to them without first having to work out their rights or apply for it. The mechanism for claiming refunds and delays and cancellations is complex and cumbersome. As we found with Ryanair, the rules are not always explained correctly or explained at all to passengers. This at a time when innovation in technology should be lessening the need for passenger administration and red tape. Let me use rail and flight as examples, albeit this bill would apply to trams, ferries and other paid modes of transport. Turning first to rail, of which I declare my current interest as a 12-year veteran on the daily commute from East Sussex to London. Last year, nearly 67 million rail journeys were either cancelled or were significantly late. These delays can lead to lost output, financial hardship and stress. Passengers expect adequate compensation for these difficulties. To do so fully would incentivise the train operators and Network Rail to do more to prevent these issues from occurring in the first place. This would, in turn, increase our nation's productivity. Whilst a number of steps have been taken in the last year, including strengthening the Consumer Rights Act of 2015 and the introduction of Delay Repay 15 for Southern and new franchises, only a third of rail passengers who are owed compensation make a claim. Network Rail currently makes payments to train operators for all delays which it has caused for track and infrastructure failures. However, Mr. Speaker, if only a third of the passengers who experience the actual delay claim for it, the remainder must be retained by the train operators. My bill would require the train operators to ring-fence this excess. It could be used only to advance technology which would allow every passenger to touch on and off their train. Having pre-registered account details, the passenger would automatically receive compensation in their bank account on the day they were inconvenienced. None of this should be particularly complicated. 6 of the 27 train operators have some form of automatic compensation for certain passengers. Of these 6, I understand that Virgin Trains West Coast offer it to passengers who book directly, Govia Thameslink, via its 3 operators, and C2C offer, as I understand it, automatic compensation for season ticket holders. Providing this as some sort of perk to certain classes of ticket holders is missing the point and distorts competition in the ticket buying market. Every passenger is entitled to compensation. If the technology exists, then it must be applied to all. Where compensation is not going to the passenger, the taxpayer-funded compensation coming from Network Rail must be used by all train operators to get us to a place where compensation is automatically delivered to every passenger so entitled. Let me now turn to flights, Mr. Speaker. The situation is arguably worse with airlines, as the recent debacle with Ryanair demonstrated. With 2,100 flights being cancelled and 315,000 passengers of Ryanair being left out of pocket completely. However, the company's website failed to mention the word compensation, mentioning only that it would comply with EU Regulation 261 of 2004. Mr. Speaker, unless a passenger happens to be an expert in EU regulations, they would not realise that this rule set provides compensation and assistance to passengers in the event of being denied boarding, cancellation, delays and downgrading when flying. It took the Civil Aviation Authority to threaten enforcement proceedings before Ryanair informed its customers of their compensation rights. This is not new ground for the CAA. In the last 6 years, it has successfully taken action against a number of airlines, including Ryanair, for a range of issues, including non-payment of compensation and providing limited information to passengers. All of this can be avoided. Putting the onus on the airline to calculate compensation and credit it automatically must be possible. For security reasons, every airline must know which flight a passenger is booked on, and they know whether it has been delayed or cancelled. They also know a passenger's account details, or they can find it via the flight booking agency. I put this contention to the Chief Executive of British Airways when he was before the Transport Select Committee last month, and I asked him why automatic compensation could not be brought in to his industry. His response was to state as follows: "We will pass that cost on to the consumer like we always do. We do not operate as a charity." Mr. Speaker, this defensive response was revealing. It suggests, for there to be a cost to pass on, that many passengers are not claiming for delays or cancellation because they do not know their full rights or find it too cumbersome to claim. Unlike the rail industry, we simply do not know. It seems from the Chief Executive of British Airways that we are unlikely to find out without a change of approach or a change in legislation. Because when I asked him what proportion of passengers claim and are repaid for compensation, he remarked, "I am not prepared to disclose that. That is commercially sensitive." Despite my repeated requests as to why this answer would give his rivals the upper hand, no additional information was forthcoming. Mr. Speaker, the previous week, the Transport Select Committee had heard from the Secretary of State for Transport, who, I should add, does an excellent job, and I hope the adoption of this bill by the government will further his ascent to the skies. I asked the Secretary of State for his views on automatic compensation. The Secretary of State took the view that this is not a one-size-fits-all industry. It is a big step for government to intervene to try to tell businesses how to operate. If there is an absolutely compelling reason to do so, government acts sometimes. Mr. Speaker, this to me summarises the situation, and it provides a justification for this bill. The airline industry has to adopt a one-size-fits-all approach from rules driven by the UK Border Agency, the Civil Aviation Authority, NATS, the European Union and other agencies and regulators. I believe the airline industry can take this additional step, and I believe that train operators and those running our ferries, trams, buses and other modes of transport could do likewise. The compelling reason for Parliament and government to do so is that millions of passengers are not only being inconvenienced by delays, but are not being compensated. It is time for those responsible for the passenger to give something back without further work from the passenger. I thank the 50 honourable members and right honourable members in this place, many of whom are here this afternoon, who have pledged their support to this proposal. It follows the murmur of approval across the House when I asked the Prime Minister to support this change during Prime Minister's questions. There are many things which the arithmetic of this place will not allow us to deliver. This is one such change where the consumer will benefit from us working together, cross-party, in Parliament, to change its approach.
Order. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as I've got to say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
The cross-party dream team of Tom Brake, Maria Caulfield, Douglas Chapman, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, Lillian Greenwood, Peter Kyle, Ben Lake, Caroline Lucas, Tim Loughton, Ian Stewart, Daniel Zeichner and myself, sir.
Well done.
Hugh Merriman.
Yeah.
Automatic travel compensation bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 16th of March 2018.